times on the border, but how do you break up with your friend? I know there is no use to confront her, but how do you say this is the end? I'm through being taken for granted, and the one you call when nobody's home. Being with you means just disappointment, and last escape, so I've been told. Don't bring that bomber to my door again, my friend. You know that you've been crying wolf too many times before this time. I know it, been there, I've done that. Those words are just sand in my hair. So talk if you like. The words will be words till you bring them to life. So talk if you like. The words will be words till you bring them to life. Welcome to the show. That was Talk, Talk, Talk by St. Michael featuring Anya Gold. This is Let's Catch Up with Mike. I'm your host, Mike Vatter, and this is the special Pride Month edition of Let's Catch Up with Mike. Yay! Woo! Raise the gay roof. My special guest today is Kayla Huggins. They are a poet and host of the podcast, The Raindrop Corner, of which I am a huge fan. I honestly, between my podcasts and my work, I do not get to listen as often as I can, but as often as I want to, I should say, but I do listen as often as I can. And I download episodes and I listen, like, I'll listen in bursts. And then I'll listen to like 3 or 4, and then it'll be like a month before I can listen again. And I'll listen to like 3 or 4 again. But I do promote you. You know I do. I share your
I
episodes.
know you do, and
I share them all around. Like I'll share them, and people are like, "What's this one about?" I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't listened yet." But I know it's going to be good because I'm going to listen to it later. But you know, people are like, "How do you share it if you don't know what it's about?" I'm like, because I know Kayla like a sister, like a family member, and I know it's going to be great content, and I promise I'm going to listen to it at some point, and I always do eventually. But Kayla is like family to me. Kayla and I have known each other for, I feel like forever, but we've only known each other for like what, 4 years?
I think it's been 4 years. I was thinking about this because I knew it was going to come up. I'm like, it's been about 4 years.
But it feels like we've known
longer.
each other our entire lives, right?
It does.
It does.
And thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. And you gave me like one of the best wake up calls that I've had. I was here for that, for the music.
That song is such a great song. It's, you know, Saint Michael and Anya Gold have been around forever. But that song, words are not words till you bring them to life, is such a great line. And I thought this, just the title, Talk, 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 is like, that's my mantra, right? Like, and you and I are the same in that regard. Once we start, it's like people go, "Oh my God, shut up," or they go, "Give me more, give me more." You know, it's like we just talk.
Very true.
But words are not words till you bring them to life is kind of, that describes you as well, because as a poet and as a fellow podcaster, but I digressed. I got myself off topic. Your Raindrop Corner podcast is on Audible, Apple, SoundCloud, and of course, KaylaReneeHuggins.com. And you are such a wordsmith. And you are also on the board of my nonprofit, or I should say our nonprofit, but the nonprofit that I helped create, the Safe Resource Center of Jacksonville. Which is a safe space for queer adults and their loved ones. It's kind of it fills that gap between the many nonprofits that help queer youth and the very few nonprofits that help queer elders. But we've kind of filled that gap. And although we don't have a actual safe space, we have a safe space online and a safe space in our hearts. And we help queer adults wherever we can, whether it's with clothing donations or food donations or monetary donations, which is very few, very far and few and in between. But we do have physical things, food. Food and clothing and items, appliances. People give us appliances all the time. And resources, medical and mental health resources that we refer people to all the
Mhm.
time. So you've been on the board with me since the beginning, and I really appreciate all the work that you do with the Safe Resource Center of Jacksonville. And that's a Facebook page. It's very easily found, and it
Mhm.
always links through the Let's Catch Up page if people need to find that. But your Kayla Renee,
It's okay.
my dentures
It's
slipped.
early. It's fine.
KaylaReneeHuggins.com website is where everyone can find your Raindrop Corner podcast and all of your wonderful poetry and podcast links. So welcome to the show officially. Now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, your very lengthy introduction. So welcome. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. And this is really cool. I've only done one other interview. So I was a little nervous today, which is so weird because I interview people often, but it's interesting sitting on this side of the table.
Yeah, so the tables are normally flipped for you. But it's just, it's just a conversation. That's what I always tell people. I have done interviews on both sides of the table, and when it's reversed, I always tell people, and I've been on interviews with people who have never been the one being interviewed. I partner with nonprofits all the time to help promote them as part of my daily work as a consultant. And I tell people, do people get nervous and they say, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. I'm like, it's just a conversation. There might be a camera or a microphone in front of you, but just relax. It's a conversation. And if you say anything stupid, you know what? The news cycle is so fast that some politician or other celebrity is going to say something really dumb right behind you, and whatever you said is going to be forgotten in a nanosecond. So we are not famous enough.
That's a good way to phrase it. I need to start telling people.
Our stupidity will not last because somebody more famous than us is going to say something much dumber.
I'm excited to be here with you and to see you. I've missed you, and it's nice to be here.
The worst thing about this past now 16 months, going on 17 months of this pandemic and lockdown has been, and everyone's dealt with it differently. Some people never stopped living their lives, and some people have been in lockdown for 17 months, like I know you and I have for the most part.
Pretty much, I have.
Yeah, even with masks and vaccinations and all that stuff, and being very, very cautious, it's been tough because a lot of people have different issues, different health issues, different underlying issues, different comfort levels. That I'm still not comfortable going out in a lot of situations. And I will break my own rules and go out and march and take back the Acosta Bridge like we did yesterday. And I will, go to the grocery store and the pharmacy when I absolutely have to. But mostly, I've been kind of a recluse, and I've been, I can't think of his name now. It was on the tip of my tongue. The guy, the aviator, Howard Hughes.
Oh, jeez.
I've been Howard Hughes living in my house, and I'm not peeing in jars yet, but I do. I do have everything delivered, and my husband and I are like, bring us more cats. We'll bring us more cats, and we'll be happy. We have everything delivered, and we just don't leave the house because it's everyone else that we're worried about. It's not us, But yeah, it's been tough not seeing people that we love and care about, and we're slowly getting back out there. But it's been tough, and I miss you so much. But I'm so glad to see your face, even if it's virtual right now. But
glad to see yours.
I love you so much, and I'm so glad that you're a part of this today. We're here to talk about pride. And I know it's not going to be an easy conversation because I know some of your story and some of your history, but I want you to take the floor, take the mic, and tell us, the idea of pride for you has taken a few shifts, and it's some hairpin turns and some definite some pretzel knots in there. But the idea of pride in your life and how it manifests in your everyday, how does that work for you? How does that show in your life, and how has it changed? I want to hear your story and how it's evolved.
Oh, and thanks again for allowing me to talk about my story and speak about it. I would say that pride for me the vision behind it was very minimal initially, because my idea of pride was, being a scared 16-year-old girl kind of going into my junior year of high school. I came out that summer of my sophomore year, before my junior year in high school. And for me, it was coming out to my mom and my sister initially. And then later, when I joined a GSA, a Gay Straight Alliance at my high school, I was like, oh, there are people there who are also gay and who are trans. We got our first trans student at my high school that year. We had people who were pansexual, people who were bisexual, people who were fluid. But back then, when I was in high school, there weren't a lot of words to describe different types of fluidity and what that meant. And for me, pride was being in an after school gay straight alliance. It was being out to my mom and my sister in my high school. And, later when I came out to my family, it was that I'm out and I'm proud. So I am prideful. And I don't think that's incorrect. But for me, it shifted a lot because I realized that my scope of it was very small. I didn't really understand a lot of the things going on in the LGBT plus community. And I will say that the moment where I started to kind of question what pride meant to me is when the rest of my family found out the first time I got my girlfriend. And for context, I stated, came out when I was 16, joined the Gay Straight Alliance when I was 17. And then my family found out about me being gay from Facebook, actually. I got my first girlfriend when I was 18 years old. I'm sorry, 19 years old. And I put it on Facebook. And I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was like, I'm proud to be with my girlfriend and I'm gay. And this makes me happy. And I just wanted to let everyone know. My uncle put a bunch of Bible verses on my status and publicly humiliated me on my own status and said I was going to hell. And I got more vulgar messages in my messenger before Messenger was a thing, as a private message from him. And then I remember my mom standing up for me, but I also remember that shift in my family. A lot of times, just to kind of talk about it, growing up as a person of color, and I'm only using this word because this is exactly how it's phrased, but it's not a word that I enjoy using. A lot of times, especially Black elders will say phrases like to their sons, I don't want you to grow up to be a faggot. You're not allowed to be a faggot. They don't really say anything to the girls, but it's completely taboo for a boy to do anything that's remotely feminine or to present in a feminine way. And there is just homophobia exists no matter what color you are, what race, background. But I feel like in the Black community specifically, there is a lot of homophobia. And for me, I didn't expect to experience as much because for the longest time, I wasn't really given any context that it was wrong. But I remember going to church growing up in Black churches, Black Baptist churches, and hearing from the pastor that it was weird to be gay. And me not knowing why that made me so angry as an 8, 9, 10-year-old girl, to the point where my mom was like, we're not going back to that church. We don't have to, if that upsets you. And my family, I remember shortly after I came out, I want to say about a year later, I ran into my aunt at the movie theater and she had my little baby cousins with her. And I was going to go say hi to them and give them a hug. And she literally physically pulled them away from my direction because she acted as if I would, give them the gay or infect them or taint them somehow by touching them. And to this day, there are some members in my family who I will say are tolerant, but they aren't holistically accepting. My mom and my sister are in my corner and have been in my corner, But most of my family, they talk behind my back. I walk into a room and it gets quiet. And the one thing that I have noticed outside of just family is the fact that I don't get a lot of support from elders of color. But as I've gotten older, pride has evolved because I've met other people who have gone through similar stories and realized that I struggled with being out and proud. I struggled with the term of pride because I didn't 100% know what that really meant. And for me, that definition is different for every person. I was like, how do I make it to where people have a safe space and they don't feel quite as isolated as I felt, whether they're a person of color or not a person of color? And pride shifted dramatically for me when I moved here to Jacksonville, and specifically about 3 to 4 years later when I actually started spending time in gay spaces in Jacksonville and LGBT plus spaces here. And by doing that, I was able to find camaraderie and find people who not just wanted support in terms of showing their sexuality or expressing themselves from an identity standpoint or what have you. They wanted support with learning how to connect to other humans who happen to be somewhere on the spectrum. They wanted support with knowing what their purpose was in life, or at least having somebody that was comfortable with them musing about it in a space where it was okay to not know things. It was okay to be socially awkward, or okay to maybe want to do something more than go to a bar. And while that's fun, I was like, pride for me is figuring out what the needs are in my community. And as I'm enriching myself, as a gender fluid gay person, also enriching my community and giving back to the people who really need that. Mm-hmm. And I think in many ways, it's taking the struggles that I experience as a gay or queer person. Sometimes for me, I use those terms interchangeably, but taking what I go through and meeting other people and finding ways to help, whether it's support groups. I've facilitated over a couple of those, whether it's attending them, whether it's being on the board of SAFE so that I can really kind of add something to the LGBT plus community as a whole in the way that's best conducive for me. And as I've become an adult, and I was an adult before, but as I've kind of grown into myself and found my own voice, it's easier for me to talk about, the issues in the Black community and acceptance. Right. It's easier for me to also talk about the issues in terms of what people who are trans face, people who are Black and trans specifically, people who get murdered and beat. And even as the world, sometimes becomes more accepting towards other, I would say, binary aspects of the LGBT plus spectrum, the injustice that others face. And also recently, I want to say within the last 2.5 years, I came out as gender fluid, which completely flipped things on its head for me, because me and my sister, my mom and my sister, we had to work through that. One of my biggest supports, struggled with that, struggled with seeing me as a woman and only a woman and how I would be received by the world. Mm-hmm. I've come out as gender fluid multiple times in different spaces, and it has definitely taxed my experience with the people that I'm closest with. So pride for me, just to kind of sum it all up, is me being a part of the equation, but other people in the community being part of the equation. How am I lifting myself in others and doing it 365 days of the year, not just in June?
Right.
And that's what it is for me. And I think it's also understanding that pride isn't all literally sunshine and rainbows. It is
Right.
the dark stuff. It is the uncomfortable stuff that people may not want to hear about or talk about. And it's finding ways to bring all of that into spaces that are not just LGBTQIA plus, and spaces that can advocate, or spaces that are ready to at least listen. That's what pride is to me.
I love that. That is a well. Thank you, first of all, for being brave and sharing your story and sharing your journey. I really appreciate that, and I think it's important. That's why I'm doing this series. I think it's very important that people share their stories, no matter how um, common or uh, disinteresting the person feels their story may be to themselves. I've had a lot of people respond to me and say, my story's not interesting, or my story's just, it's vanilla, it's bland. Because to some of us, our stories are just that. It's like, well, my story's not interesting, nothing exciting happened. But your story, even though it's your lived experience, and you kind of go, well, I survived it. I did what I had to do. No one's going to be able to draw anything from that. Your story is not like that. Your story it has a lot of twists, as they say. The Law and Order twists are, you didn't expect. But if you didn't share that story, it goes untold, and therefore someone who's going through that now, who is struggling, can't get the help they need because they don't know that there's something to get help for. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So I really appreciate you sharing your story. If people who are in it don't know, when you're in the story, you may not know that there's something that needs to be gotten help for. So I really appreciate you sharing that story, and your story is one that I think needs to be told. So thank you for doing that. And also, I want to touch on two things that you said. You mentioned queer spaces and nightclubs, and going to clubs and bars and things. You and I are a lot alike. My friend Anthony, who I've known for God, I think 30 years. He shared a meme with me. I know he didn't create it, but I give him credit because he brought it to me. He said, I'm not your typical gay. I'm not a homosexual who goes out to bars and drinks until I get plastered. I'm a stay-at-home gay. I consider myself a homo. I'm a couch gay. I call myself a homosexual. And
yes, I've seen that meme.
yeah, and I think you and I fit that category. Yeah. I was a club gay. I did dance on speaker boxes and wear the tight gold shorts when I could pull them off. Well, I mean, leave them on, but when I could, I did pull them off. I did sometimes pull them off, but when I could wear them with gusto. But now I would spill out of them. But but yeah, now I'm more of a homosexual. I sit on the couch and I'd much rather have friends over and watch a movie. And but that, to me, that's a gay space. We create our own gay spaces, you and I.
We do.
And that's as important. Going to a coffee shop that may not be a gay coffee shop, but let's make it a gay coffee shop while we're there. That's creating a gay safe space, right? So I think you and I are alike in that sense. You also mentioned, you said I was an adult, at the time that I started experiencing my coming out transitions. But as I became an adult, more of an adult, I think is the way you phrased it. But you were a baby gay. And you may have been an adult in the world, but you were a baby gay. And I think that's important too. People talk about, the gay aging gay is different than aging straight. And I don't mean that as a stereotypical thing. And I don't mean it as a joke. The gay infancy is different than the straight coming of age. Because when we come out, it is like Bambi on the ice. We're finding our legs. We're finding our footing. It's almost like being a child all over again. We're exploring the world. We're experiencing new feelings and new textures and new scents and new emotions and new What is that sound? What is that smell? What is that touch? What is that? All those things, new sensories, new everything in the quote gay world, because we've been homogenized, the other homo, we've been homogenized all of our lives up to that point of um, living in this protected space of the safe, nuclear family of, not everyone, but a lot of us have been, put in this, hermetically sealed mayonnaise jar of, of what it's like to be in this straight world. And when we do come out, it's like, this is a whole new thing. It's a whole new world, and we have to kind of go, this is all new. So we are starting a whole different life. And you are a baby gay. You're the baby bird in the nest that just came out of its shell, and you have to experiencing everything. You have to be experiencing everything new. So at 16, 17, 18 years old, as an adult person, you're a baby gay. And so at 25, 30, you're an adolescent gay. And, so people say, well, gays age differently, gays do time differently. My husband and I have been together for going on, it'll be 25 years, June 28th, that we've been together, and we will have been married 5 years, 6 years in November. And it, people say, well, you're an old married gay couple. You in gay years, you've been married 80 years. Well, yeah, in gay years, we've been married 80 years because most gay relationships don't last 25 years. So that's the thought anyway. That's the stereotype that, we're an old married gay couple because we've been together so long that we do sit on the couch and just watch TV. We do flip through the Weather Channel like like my 80-year-old parents do who've been married for 5 years, because that's the once you hit that timeline, it starts to speed up like dog years. But up until then, it's gay years. So I wanted to touch on that because I think it's important to note that, A, there is truth in stereotypes, but B, that the gay years, the gay timeline, does affect kind of the coming out process. It's important to note that that aspect is somewhat true, but also what you also said about the 365, we never stop coming out. There's always someone we have to come out to. And it's not just for our comfort zone or their comfort zone, because somebody at a job or somebody at a school or somebody in a new social setting, not only are they want to know what we are, because that's human nature to be curious, but also people want to label each other. And that's good, bad, or indifferent. If we, I said this in the interview I did with Brandon Hicks, if you choose your own label, and not everyone has to, but if you choose your own label, fucking own it. If somebody else chooses your label, you get to decide whether or not you own it or reject it. And that's very powerful.
It is.
But if you're in a situation where somebody wants to know what you are, you get to decide whether or not you tell them. But we're constantly in that battle. Do I tell them? Do I not tell them? Are they worth me telling them? Are they going to be in my life long enough for them to know? But there's also that sense of pride. I want people to know who and what I am, because I should be allowed to live my life just like they do. I should be allowed to go into the bakery and buy a fucking donut without being treated differently than any other customer here. I should be allowed to have the bridge lit up in the colors just like everyone else has gotten the bridge lit up in the colors. I should be allowed to go into the bookstore and find a queer romance novel just like everyone else gets to find their romance novel. I should be allowed to buy a book on queer history just like everyone else gets to find a book on their history. So that's why we have to keep coming out. That's why, people say, oh, you're throwing it in my face. No, we have to keep fighting and having pride, because we don't have it. We don't have the equal treatment that we deserve. And laws have come a long way. We do have some equal protections, but we don't have the equal treatment. So I wanted to touch on those things that you kind of mentioned, but I wanted to kind of echo those back. Juneteenth falls smack in the middle of Pride Month. And that is we talked about intersectionality. And Juneteenth is kind of a lot of people consider, and I'm one of them that kind of got on that. I didn't know what Juneteenth was growing up because it's not taught in school. It's not taught in history class. But Juneteenth is kind of the real or the second Independence Day in this country. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, it's the date that slaves were kind of told, hey, this is the actual day that you're free. It wasn't the day it was made so, but it's the day that everyone was told. It's kind of that weird mail. You think mail is slow now. Word of mouth back then was like, oh yeah, you guys have been free for a really long time. We just kind of forgot to tell you. It's the Valley Girl Kardashian voice that I do for history. Like, oh my god, we didn't tell you guys that you don't have to do that anymore. Yeah, we should be paying you or letting you go. So sorry, you don't have to work for us anymore. So Juneteenth is the official day that the slaves were freed. So it falls smack in the middle of Gay Pride Month, which I'm sure that was not intentional, but I love that it kind of happened because that's a huge intersection in the pride of queer people of color. Any thoughts on that? It's not really a question. It's more of a statement, but I want to get your thoughts.
Something that I love is that I feel like, especially last year, like Juneteenth is something that I've been familiar with, I want to say, for a long, long time, several years. I believe in 2019 was the first time that I actually heard whispers of it outside of Black spaces. And my friends who were very involved in history and just knew that the significance of Juneteenth. And then last year, everything with the George Floyd murder and Breonna Taylor and the culmination of murders that have been happening for many years, and at the crux of the protests and also some of the riots that happened as a result, we saw people talking about Juneteenth and what it meant. And specifically during June, not only did I see, news sources talking about it or just my friends on social media, but there are people in the gay community and the LGBTQIA plus community talking about Juneteenth and raising awareness for it, whether they were a person of color or not. I like the fact that it's in June. And the reason that I do is because I find that it is a month where people, whether they want to pay attention to Pride Month or not, they are paying more attention. Everything is more colorful. You have companies who, maybe they're doing it to capitalize. They are involving themselves in Pride. And as a result, everything that happens during June is sort of magnified because more people are talking about it. And in the LGBTQIA plus community, in spaces where maybe POC people got a little bit more criticism and hate from people who were not POC or people who were not in the community, the LGBT plus community has always been a little bit more accepting of concepts and ideas and history. And I feel like Juneteenth has definitely become that also. It's not just people talking about Pride. It is people talking about Juneteenth also. And I have seen that before June even started. And I think it's important. I think that advocacy runs in many different circles. And I think that we kind of build each other up. Why would we not want to talk about Juneteenth when we want people to talk about pride. We want to be acknowledged. We want to matter. And the essence of pride is June is your protected space, even though we love you 365.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be in terms of Juneteenth. And I think it's super appropriate that it would exist, that it would be vivified in Pride Month.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great point. I also, just as an aside, you mentioned George Floyd. Father's Day, shifts based on the date because it's always the third Sunday or fourth Sunday of the month of June. I forget how it falls, but it's it usually falls earlier in the month. And this year it falls on the 20th, and so it's the day after Juneteenth, June 19th. So to me, it's fitting that Father's Day is the day after Juneteenth, and it's the first Father's Day that his children will have without him. Actually, second, but the first after the conviction of his killer. So I think it's going to be a very bittersweet Father's Day for them. And I'm actually getting kind of choked up talking about it.
I am too.
But it's the first Father's Day after the conviction of his killer, and it's the day after Juneteenth, and it's Pride Month. So I think that's all very fitting. I actually am getting choked up, and so so I think it's very fitting. It's a wonderful month and a bittersweet anniversary for them. So I think it's very bittersweet's the best word, because it's not going to be happy for them at all. But I hope it's a month that a date that they can remember him with some pride. And I know that doesn't have much connection to the LGBTQ plus Pride Month, but I know that every family has a connection to the gay pride, to the queer pride community. Oh wow! I did not expect to get so hooked up on that.
It's okay.
It was a very very difficult time for everybody to witness that video and all everything that went on with the trial. But and Father's Day is an important holiday for many of us. It is for me, and so it's just to know that they were going to have the first Father's Day with after that conviction and losing him. So I just think it's very fitting that it's the day after Juneteenth, and it's like I said, it's Pride Month. So let's get off that, because I'm gonna be a mess. I'm gonna have the ugly Oprah cry.
No, I understand. I was talking about that the other day with somebody, and I was a mess. I am tearing up, but I was like, I feel like I cried so much recently about it. Because it's also awesome. I like, even at my work, my day job outside of the creative projects that I do, they told us they were giving us Juneteenth off, that we all deserved it and we were going to have it off.
That's awesome.
Like, and not just the day of Juneteenth, but the day before. So it's cool. It's really nice that I get to celebrate, because normally I've worked in spaces where I've had to work during that time. And me and my coworkers, we would celebrate how we would all, we would wear African garb to work, dashikis, and we would take moments to just be together and just manifest ideas and thoughts and talk about our ancestors. But having to do that in 15-minute spaces, because that's when we get our break, is hard. And it's nice that there's actually honor put there. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that 2020 gave us, was the fact that it is important to honor people from all walks of life. And also, even if people are unwilling to accept it, it put the idea out into the ethos that respect is not something that is a privilege. It is something that every single human is entitled to. Whether you are Black, whether you are part of the LGBTQIA plus community, whether you are Asian, everybody is entitled to respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that is a good place to end this and wrap this up, because like I said, I'm going to do the Oprah ugly cry. Continue. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. I love you.
Yes, I love you too.
You are one of my favorite people, and I cannot wait to wrap my arms around you and see you in person. Just give you a great big hug. Um,
Likewise. Looking forward to it.
so much thanks, so much love for you. Kayla Huggins, her website is KaylaReneeHuggins.com, where you can find the Raindrop Corner, links to Audible, Apple, and SoundCloud for the Raindrop Corner website, or sorry, podcast on the website. The wonderful poetry and the podcast are all there. And thank you again so much. And thank you for all the hard work you do with the Safe Resource Center. And actually, we have a board meeting later today, so
we do.
I will see you again. I'm
excited. That's more time with you.
I know. I just want to pee. I'm so excited. All right. Well, I love you so much. I'm going to play our outro music, and I will see you in a little bit.
I will see you in a little bit, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.